everybody. Welcome to the semi-weekly Tablas Creek Instagram live broadcast. I am, as always, Jason Haas, your host. So my guest this week is going to be Vince Anter, who is the creator of Vias for Vino, which is a super cool wine show, which shows on Netflix. It is terrific. He's super dynamic, and I can't wait for you to meet him if you haven't already. But while I wait for people to join, as I always do, I'm going to show you a few pictures of what's going on at the vineyard, because there's been a lot of growth in the last couple of weeks. The last that I probably told you, we were still recovering from frost. We had a frost on May 10th, but things look really good now. Even in the sections, I'm going to show you the worst first. I'm going to show you a section that was totally frozen. This is a Roussan block at the bottom part of the vineyard that was totally frozen a month ago. It has come back. I don't think we're going to get a crop off of this, but I'm no longer worried that we're going to have trouble for the vines surviving this next winter. So that's a positive. And even better, there are many pieces of the vineyard that look amazing. So here's a little shot looking up our Grenache Blanc block at the western edge of the property. Another long view. You this one here. This is looking down through a Vermentino section, also at the western edge of the property. Show you a couple of head-trained vines that I think just look amazing. This is a Grenache block at the western edge of the property. These vines are well taller than I am. They look so lush and exuberant. We are starting to see, we've seen fruit set, flowering is done. We have some grapes like Counoise. Let me show you the Counoise vine first, and then the Counoise cluster. Counoise cluster. You can see that we have little berries even on our late grapes like Counoise. And then for an early grape like Grenache, the grapes are getting big already. So you can see those are kind of pea-sized. They're going to continue to grow fast. They'll keep growing until we get to veraison, which is the next marker that we have. That's going to happen in, probably starting in late July or early August. So vineyard looks good. Crop levels look good. Fruit set looks good. I feel a lot better about things than I did in the aftermath of that frost. And that's a good thing. Okay, couple last pictures, things that I'm super excited about. We bottled this past week. We bottled 7 white wines. Oops, that's only 6. I have another picture where we actually got 7, all 7 of them. Here we go. So including our Côte Blanc, our Grenache Blanc, and then some of the super small production things like Clairette and Picardin and Picpoul. So keep your eyes on emails. We'll be announcing the release of those over coming weeks. And something that I think is super exciting about this is if you look on the back label of these wines, you will see that these are the first wines that we have bottled, the first white wines that we have bottled from the estate from 2021, which means they're the first wines that can carry that regenerative organic certified seal along with the CCOF certified organic seal. And this is what all of our estate wines are going to look like going forwards. So just the beginning, but I think unimportant milestone. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to invite Vince to join. There he is. I gave a very quick intro at the beginning, but if you have not watched his Vias for Vino show, you need to.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Vince. Doing great.
It made me
nice to see your smiling face.
I miss coming and visiting you guys. I haven't been in a couple of years. Yeah, for sure.
Time to get you back to Pastor Robles. Awesome. So I give people a super quick introduction, really just to Vias for Vino when we started. But I always like to start with my guests by asking, what was your path into wine? Like, was wine on your table growing up? Was it something that you knew you would want to pursue as a passion or a business?
Wine was when I was a kid. My dad was in the wine industry on kind of the importer distributor side, and my family business was. He doesn't do that anymore. But I was kind of always around wine. They would drink wine as a kid. And you know how when you were like you would walk into in college, a college party the day after, and you get that smell of like the next day's beer. So like, you know, the empty cups, I would get that with wine from my father from like empty glasses. Like my first memory is like that empty glass red wine, you know, from the next day or a couple hours later. It's like my first wine memory. And then I really got into it when I started traveling. I spent a year abroad in Europe, and then I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." And then when I started working in restaurants, that's when I really fell in love.
So where were you in Europe? What was the
France.
country that turned you on?
The ultimate turn you on to wine country. I remember I was in Saint-Emilion visiting, and like everybody always asks, "What's your aha wine?" That's a big question, you know. I think for any wino. And I can't tell you what it is, but what I can tell you is I had it in Bordeaux. I guarantee you it was a Bordeaux. I was at a friend's house, and when I told him I was kind of into wine, and I didn't know anything, I was a kid in college, they brought out some baller wine that if you told me what it is today, I'm sure it was like a, you know, First Growth or something baller that they had in their cellar that I didn't get to know what it was. So I don't know exactly what my aha wine was, but I remember tasting it and being like, oh, this is special and this is different than anything I've had before.
Cool. Okay, so then follow that through. So you came back to the States. You started working in restaurants.
I'll give you up
what
to the
happened
show.
next?
So I was in LA. I was trying to be a rock star like a lot of other people in LA. And so eventually I started falling out of that, and I was working in restaurants while I was doing that, while I was playing music. And I just started getting really into wine. Somebody said, hey, you should go for your sommelier certification. And so I did that process. And while I did that, I just kind of determined that there was no easy video-based Bourdain meets Alton Brown-esque wine show. You know, as us who are into wine know, wine is about the place more and the food, and it's about everything around the wine. It's not just about the beverage, and it's really unique in that sense. I always tell people, if you gave me the ingredients and the recipe for Guinness, I could get really, really close making it here in America. I know some people would argue with me on that, but I could get close. But I can't do that with wine, and so I wanted to bring people to the place. And so I had this kind of random idea, this go out and make a wine show, because nobody else was making it, and here we are several years later. We're getting ready to produce our 4th season.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think there have been so many food shows in so many different ways of approaching food, and yet wine, like, it hasn't been something where there has been this like wide range of resources that are out there in video?
And I'll try and go through them quickly. Number one is the same reason you see 1,000,001 nursing shows and police shows, is because networks like to follow a formula they know that works and that will achieve success. And so they don't like to take chances on new concepts. And there hasn't been a successful wine show. And so they don't, you know, want to put that risk and put a ton of money into it. And then the other thing is that wine is a bit risky from a, you know, you're promoting alcohol, but I think that has dissipated a little bit. I actually think the biggest reason is that most of the wine shows that had existed, or the concepts, people forget that wine all looks the same on camera. The wine show is, you know, it can be boring because you're not sitting there tasting it, and red wine looks like red wine. And so what we try and do in our show is, one, bring value to the people watching. So it's very education based, as you know. We try and educate people, and I found that I thought I was going to have to like sneak in the education component of the show, but it turns out that's what everybody loves. People like to learn about wines because there was no way of doing that via video, especially when I launched back in 2018. And so that, you know, and we make it fun also with the people, the stories, the food, and the travel. Like, I lean into all that as much as I lean into the wine. And so I think there hasn't been any other shows that really do that. A lot of times it's just guys going and visiting pretty estates and making you jealous, but not giving you any value.
Or sitting around a table tasting wines, but not giving you anything
they're
cool
just
to look
meant
at.
for people who are, you know, and there are some shows that like are great for that, but they're meant for people who are really, really into wine. And to me, I'm kind of a step below that. I want it to appeal to everybody.
So do you feel like the fact that there hasn't really before this been kind of a successful model for wine, do you feel like some of that is because of the demographics of who drinks wine? Or in the fact, I know one of the things that's a big topic of conversation in the wine industry and among wine producers is that the demographics of who buys and drinks wine has been trending older. It's kind of been following like Gen X and baby boomers as they get older. And everyone is wondering, like, how do you get younger consumers involved, younger consumers excited about wine? Do you feel like that sort of ties into either what you're trying to do or what has been the historical struggle in wine video content?
Going back to, like I said, my competitors, the few that there are, I think are aimed for people who are already into wine. And, you know, when you're first starting in wine, it's really overwhelming. And the other thing is that I do feel like there's two kinds of shows. There's the ones that are like what I said, a little more pretentious, not really appealing to younger demographic. And there's the ones that like are super cool and fun, and they're you know, interesting, but they don't bring the value of education to it. And so what I hope is that by providing our show for free, it's really important to me that the show is always free. It's free wine knowledge for you to take and eventually start your career. And I think if you make that knowledge accessible to all different types of age brackets, income brackets, you know, ethnicity, whatever it is, if you make the knowledge accessible, I think you get rid of some of those barriers to entry, because that was the whole thing like the Court of Masters went through, right? It was like, oh, there's, you know, you have to go pay how much money to go take this class. You know, I want to make the knowledge free to everybody and easy for everybody to understand.
Awesome. So when you actually got to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to do my first season, I'm going to do the first episodes. I know, but I think Paso was the first place you visited, wasn't it?
Santa Barbara was the first episode. You guys were the second. But I approached you all at the same time.
Okay.
And I say how lucky I was in that first season to get wonderful people like you and Tablas. And then in Santa Barbara, we got Wes Hagen, who's a, you know, force in Santa Barbara. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I came to you with an idea. You didn't get to see what, you know, the show didn't exist yet. And so I always say how grateful I am that I got such amazing people in our first season, because we're self-produced. So we're not affiliated. You mentioned Netflix, by the way, earlier. We're not on Netflix yet. We're on Amazon Prime, but we're not affiliated with them. We're self-produced.
Amazon. Okay.
But it's actually free on YouTube, and I'm kind of pushing people more there now because Amazon forces me to charge, whereas, like I said, I want the knowledge to be free. And so that's no, it's okay, but that's the easiest.
Sorry
way.
about that.
We're a couple other places too. We have a Roku app, but YouTube's the easiest. Everybody has YouTube, and it's free on there. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah, I was lucky to get you and the team for the first season, because if I hadn't had a successful first season, I would have, you know, probably given up. I put all my, you know, it was bootstrapped, and I put a lot of weight into, all right, if this first season goes well, we can keep going. And so we have this great episode with Tablas, you guys, like I said, second we ever filmed. And it was really cool because you had just started with all your biodynamic activities. You had the Nathan and the shepherd there. We were able to go kind of see that when it was first in its infancy. And now I've followed it with what you guys are doing, and you've done so much more. So I don't know, we got to do another episode and catch up the people on what you guys are up to.
Anytime. Have you, in doing this now,
season 4 comes out, I'll plug here, next Friday, the 24th, and it is 7 episodes, which is more than we've ever done. Most of them are in Europe. All the details are on our Instagram page. You can see the trailer for the new season and all that. But yeah, seven new episodes coming out.
So at this point, they're done. They're filmed, and you're just in the process of releasing them.
Like I said, we're self-produced. I'm like down to the wire for some of it, but for the most part, they're definitely filmed. They're almost ready. I'd say they're 95% ready. I got some small tweaks to do, but they're done.
Cool. So have you, now having done this for whatever 3 and 9/10 seasons, have you changed the way that you go about it since the beginning? Are there things that you look to do more of, or less of,
1,000%? It's actually amazing, the evolution of each season, especially because, like I said, being self-produced. You know, if you brought in a some director and producer from Hollywood or Netflix, they'd be like, okay, here's what we're going to do. But we kind of had to learn on our own what, one, people like and what they don't, and two, how to do the things we want to do. And so now what we really lean into is a really cohesive theme for every episode. And what I mean by that is I'll come in with a plan. I'll talk to the people I'm working with in the region and say, hey, in this region, here's the stories we need to tell, and here's the messaging that we want to get by the time we're done with the episode. You know, in Bordeaux, for instance, it was, well, everybody knows Bordeaux for the cru wines, the very expensive wines, but that's like 3% or 8% or something very small of the output of Bordeaux. And they put so much wine out. Bordeaux is one of the largest producing wine regions on the planet. And so what we wanted to say was, listen, look at all these other styles of wine, all these affordable Bordeaux's. So we kind of come in now to each episode with a plan, whereas I think earlier we just kind of went in and said, let's make a fun episode. Let's interview some people. Now we kind of know what we want to hit. And it ends up making a more dynamic episode because it feels a bit more cohesive.
Cool. So if people are like wanting to, like, you have an episode that you particularly hope that if people are going to watch one first, like they start there because it kind of encapsulates everything that you've learned and put together? Or is it as simple as saying, no, you should start season 1, episode 1?
No, they don't have to be chronological. I would say, you know, it's kind of fun. Season 1, we did all California. And if you're in California, obviously it's great, right? Because then you can learn about these regions that you can go physically visit, which is fun. Season 2, we had one international episode, and then we did Oregon and Sonoma. And then season 3 was Ensenada, the Finger Lakes, New York, and Washington. And then this season's all Europe. So every season we've kind of gone further and further out. So it kind of depends what your interests are. If you want to go to places, you know, in America that they're easy to visit, you know, I've got a lot of that in the first seasons. But this new season I think is really fun. And I always tell people, travel has never, with barring the last year and a half, travel's never been more accessible in our life. Like, you can, flights are a little more pricey now, but they're still cheaper than they've ever been. Historically, you can, you know, have an Uber on your phone. You can look up where you need to go. You can translate on your phone. You can get Airbnbs. Like, it is so easy to travel. And I really want to encourage, one of my kind of idols for the show model is Phil, and Somebody Feed Phil, because he really encourages people to travel. And I really encourage people to watch these episodes, and there is no reason why you can't go to any of these places and go explore them for yourself. That was a long answer to say one of my favorites is Ensenada, Mexico, because it's just an unexpected place that they make wine, and the people are really magical, and the place is really magical. And so it's somewhere I'd say check out. But I have favorite reasons why I like every single one.
And I know, like, I've gotten probably like 8 or 10 texts or emails from people who have said, I'm sitting at this airport and I just saw you on like the airport TV. And it was from that first season of Vias for Vino episodes.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
talk about that.
Like
How did that happen?
We're self-produced. So that was something where I had been talking with them. I forget how I got the intro, but over a few months we said, hey, this would be a great fit for airports. I mean, again, like going back to that wanderlust travel component. And so now we are in most major airports in the country. You know, when you go to the terminal and you're in either a restaurant or a bar, or sometimes the terminals, they have scheduled programming and they mix us up with news and sports, but we're one of the people up there, which is really cool.
It's awesome. And that's such a sort of democratizing place to be, because so many people go through airports that, like, it's got people who have no idea that this is something that they might be interested in are going to find it in an airport, that's got to be so valuable for you and for everybody who appears in the shows
exactly.
that you
the number
film.
one thing is, we just want to getting the word out can be super challenging. There's so much content out there we're competing with. And so to have something like that is really amazing. And we're hoping also that, we'll continue to find more platforms like that going forward. I'm always pitching new places. Like I said, sometimes I think places are skeptical to take on a wine show because they think it's some boring, pretentious wine show. But usually when I can get them to watch an episode, they're like, oh, this is different, and they take the chance.
Yeah, no, it is. That was one of the things that jumped out when you were here filming, but also watching it afterwards. Is like this feels super accessible. It feels like something that you're bringing people into these worlds in a way that's fun and doesn't feel intimidating, doesn't feel snobby, doesn't feel like you're presuming anything in particular. You're just looking for people who are looking for new experiences and interested in wine and interested in
I try
meeting
and come
cool
into
people.
my episodes when I go into my interviews with that same sense of I don't know anything. Like I try to come in, like I have some wine knowledge, but like past that, like it's whoever the interviewee is, it's their region, it's their story to tell. I'm just kind of there to facilitate it and provide kind of the framework for the knowledge. But that's part of the fun for me, is to get to know these places more than I do.
So you said there's 7 episodes all in Europe in this season. Where are they?
Say that. And everyone's like, why are you doing, there's no wine in Chicago. But we decided to do a consumer-facing episode, which is how to buy wine in a store, how to talk to a som in a restaurant. And then we go to some Chicago institutions. We pair wine with hot dog and deep dish pizza and Italian beef. So it's just kind of a fun, different episode. So there is one outside of Europe, but the rest are 2 in France, Provence and Bordeaux, 1 in Italy, Piedmont, 1 in Spain, Rias Baixas, which makes Albarino, and then 2 in Portugal, 1 about port and 1 about just Portuguese wine in general. We kind of travel the country from north to south because you can travel the whole thing in like 6 hours if you drive it. So 1, just a general Portuguese influence. And I will say this new season, I mean, I'm so excited because it does kind of finally feel like we've arrived as far as, when I started back in 2016, I had a dream of what I thought the show could be. And it feels like we're finally starting to hit those concepts, the production quality, the fan base has gotten to a point where they're excited about the episodes. So it's really fun. I cannot wait to see what people think of these new episodes.
Super cool. So are there do you have like a wish list of places in future seasons that you're super excited to do?
What's funny is this was the season I feel like I said we've kind of arrived. The season I'm pitching right now, I just had a call this morning actually, is my wish list season. So I'm like, I don't know how long you're going to let me keep this train running. So I'm going to go for the wish list, bucket list places. So I'm talking to, and none of these are really confirmed yet, but I'm hoping we can go to South Africa. I want to do South America, so Chile or Argentina. And then I'm talking to Lebanon because I am part Lebanese and I want to tell that story. That country really has an amazing history with wine. So those are all on the list.
Yep.
I've got a couple other ones. I love Rioja, so I want to make a Rioja episode happen. I love the Loire Valley in France. I really want to go to Alsace, another area that's kind of this cool German-French hybrid. And what's cool is that there's really no end in sight to where I could go. Most countries make wine, especially the ones you'd want to go to. I mean, Hungary, Uruguay, places in South America, North America, Australia. I haven't even touched Australia and New Zealand yet. So there's really no end in sight to where we could go if we can keep it going.
I feel like that's sort of true for anybody who loves wine. I mean, it is an endless opportunity to dive in and dive deep. I mean, just the fact that there's thousands of grapes that people make wine out of around the world. And I mean, there's 400 grapes just in California, but that's like 1/10 of the wine grapes that people use around the world. And there's regions that have been making it for 10,000 years and others that just started in the last decade. And it really is it's global in a cool way.
I always tell people life's too short to drink Cabernet your whole life. I mean, I love a good Cabernet as much as the next person, but there's just so much to explore. And especially going back to what we said earlier, it's tied to the place. So people would often say like, oh, why don't you just cheaply produce 10 episodes all in, California? I was like, that's not the point. The point is to explore the place because it's tied to the place and the culture. And so that's what's really exciting.
So do you have, like, when you dive into a region, when you decide, say, you're going to go and do Bordeaux or you decide you're going to do Portugal. Like, do you start off by like getting a whole bunch of wines and trying those wines here, or do you try to go into those regions kind of fresh and say, okay, I'm going to show up as though I were new to this region and I'm going to learn it along with
it's
my
a little
viewers?
bit of both. What I do is I start by reaching out to, usually there's like a wine board in the area, and I start talking to them and see if there's interest and if we can put something together. The nice thing about living in 2022 is that poorly produced wine almost doesn't exist. Like, the technology has gotten so that most wineries can produce really amazing wine. Like, the quality of wine has never been higher on a global stage. And so I can go in confident that I'm not going to get, something that's really disgusting. I usually vet our producers a little bit, but I do want to go in fresh. Like, if we're doing a tasting for a shoot, and they'll sometimes give me the wine like at lunch while we're sitting there, I won't drink it because I want to come in with a fresh reaction on camera to the wine. And some fans have sometimes like tried to guess which wines I'm genuinely more excited about than others, because I'm not a good liar, and I don't ever have bad wines, but sometimes I have wines that like really blow my mind, and they can usually tell.
Right. Cool. And so, like, at home, do you have wines that you're super excited about right now? Things that you've discovered that you either through the filming of the show or just in your normal life that you feel like maybe are flying under people's radar and they should really pay more attention to?
I tend to, when I'm editing the episodes and working with the episodes, I tend to like do exactly what I hope the show does, which is like, ooh, I really want the the wine that I'm talking about in the episode. And so I've been drinking a lot of Rias Baixas Albarino, because it is a really, really versatile grape. And I didn't know this about Albarino. I kind of thought it was a light, crisp, simple wine, and it always kind of makes that style of wine. But then you go to the region, and there's sub-regions within it. So there's hotter pockets that make really rich styles. There's some wineries doing a lot of lees aging, so you get wines that'll have this creaminess, almost like a Burgundy. There's people who are doing oak fermentation. And so I've been drinking a lot of Albarino from Rias Baixas. And then the other one that is kind of one of my go-tos is, I think Santa Barbara Syrahs are just like my favorite thing on the planet right now, because I like leaner styles of Syrah in general. And it's this amazing blend of like cool climate, acidity, and freshness with like New World fruit character, and then with the spice of the grape. So that's always like one of my go-tos.
I think Syrah at the moment is just kind of it's a playground for people who like the grape. It's there are an incredible range of good styles being made, and because it's relatively unpopular, like globally, it's a relatively difficult grape to sell still, though it's gotten easier. What you have is people who are making it because they really love it, not because they've jumped on the kind of commercial bandwagon and feel like, oh great, I'm going to make a Pinot Noir because it's easy to sell, or great, I'm going to make a Cabernet because it's easy to sell. And that means right now that if you are actually finding a Syrah out in the market, like, it's likely to be really good and affordable and made by somebody for whom Syrah's a passion, which is like, that's kind of the perfect recipe for having confidence.
That's a good way to put it. I always kind of say a similar thing about like Merlot in Napa. It's like, if you like a producer's Cabernet, you're going to like the Merlot, and it's going to be less money because it's not as popular a grape, and you're going to get the same producer, but it's somebody who has a passion for that style of wine.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so what sort of next for you? I mean, are you working on other projects in addition to the next season of Vias for Vino, or is this like 100% of what you're working on right now and what you see yourself working on for 100%, for the near future?
I'm all in on the show. We have some sub things that happen within that. So we do offer the wines. We partnered with the retailer to offer the wines from the season so people can have them shipped to them. So that's kind of like a little sub area. We've actually been making more on our YouTube channel, not just the episodes, which will be released, but just some fun, lighter content, you know, some blind tasting stuff, but things that I can't do in the show because it doesn't fit in the concept of like a regional based thing, but just fun wine topics. So I've been doing that. We have a VIP club, which is honestly one of the number one ways we can continue to make the show. And what that is it's kind of like our Patreon. And so it starts at only $5 a month. It goes up from there. And what we can do is we do virtual tastings with our VIPs. It's kind of like a, you know, wine club membership without the wine. We do virtual tastings. We give raffles and giveaways. You get early access to the episodes and a whole bunch of other fun perks. And so that's also a sub thing. So they're all kind of under the umbrella of the show, but little sub businesses under that.
Uh-huh. Super cool. Well, I cannot believe that it has been half an hour, but it has been half an hour, and I always try to keep these to half an hour. But before we go, like if people want to investigate the show, learn, follow you, I mean, I know we're on at Vias for Vino for Instagram. Are there other ways? What's the YouTube channel? How else do you recommend that
Absolutely.
people
So
stay up on what you're
Instagram's
working on?
great because I post all the updates to there. So definitely just give us a quick follow. If you go on our YouTube channel, which is just if you search Vias for Vino, it'll come right up. You'll see the V logo. Subscribe to that because that's huge. Because then when you go on your YouTube feed, will come up. And then if you want to sign up for our email list online. But I would say if you're going to do one thing, just follow the Instagram because every time I post something or an episode, it's going out on the Instagram. So it would be there.
Excellent. Cool. Well, I recommend that super highly for anybody who's enjoyed this conversation. And thank you, Vince. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. Thank you for your work in bringing wine to the people. And I'm excited that like we just happened to cross paths at the right time when you were getting all this started. It's been really fun to watch the show.
Well, thank you. And I can say the
watch it all
same
grow.
thing about you. I mean, I've seen what you guys are doing, not just from, hey, we're, you know, making amazing wine and we're going to bring in all the Rhone varietals, but then coming in and doing different things with organics and biodynamics and always trying to push yourself. The winery is really special. And when I talk to people about Tablas Creek, it has the reputation it deserves on the wine market, which is just some of the most innovative world-class wines coming out of not just California, but anywhere. So thank you for, like I said, I was honored to have you be one of our first episodes. And people, if they haven't seen it, should check out our Paso Robles episode and see Tablas in it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Vince. Thank you, everybody who joined. I'll be back again in 2 weeks. I'll be joined by Greg Lambrecht, who is the founder of Coravin, which should be a fun conversation. Get to talk about his journey from making medical devices to making this great tool that allows us to get inside a wine bottle without pulling the cork. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, I hope you have a good summer solstice and that you're staying cool wherever you are. So again, thank you, Vince. Thank you, everybody. And I'll see you in a couple weeks.